Well, we all know that 45 loves to exaggerate things, and one of the things he exaggerated on is his economic miracle for tax cuts. And the article I'm reading is called "The Tax Were Tax Cuts Really an Economic Miracle?" And I'm going to tell you that from before I even read the article, it's a no. Coming from it says coming out of Baltimore, Maryland, Cheeto has elevated his tax cuts to an act of biblical proportions, misleadingly claiming at a White House speech Friday that they triggered an economic miracle. Not quite. Also on Friday, the president's top economics aide, Larry Kudlow, appeared on the Fox News, or also what I like to call fake news network, to address one of the major problems with the tax cuts, that they will heap more than $1 trillion onto the national debt. Kudlow falsely countered that the budget deficit was falling because of growth generated by the tax cuts. The deficit is actually rising. 6 months ago, Cheeto claimed we unleashed an economic miracle by signing the biggest tax cuts and reforms, the biggest tax cuts in American history. Now, fact checking this, the squatter is exaggerating, if not being downright deceptive. Rather than achieving a miracle, his tax cuts have helped stoke additional growth in an economic expansion that was already approaching its 10th year. The additional growth is largely fueled by government borrowing as the federal deficit rises because of the tax cut. The pace of growth is expected to taper off after next year, according to the Congressional Budget Office, the Federal Reserve, and outside analysts. And while the $1.5 trillion growth is of tax reductions over the next decade are substantial, they're far from the largest in U.S. history as a share of the overall economy. The Cheeto's tax cut ranks behind Ronald Reagan's in the Ronald Reagan's tax cuts in the early 1980s, post World War II tax cuts, and at least several more, according to the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. Cheeto proudly went through a list of economic achievements that were basically built under the progress of Obama. And we know Cheeto likes to take credit for shit that he had nothing to do with. The 3.8% unemployment rate and the historically low level of requests for jobless aid are both the result of a steady and gradual recovery from the worst economic meltdown since 1929. Several hundred companies respond to the tax cuts by paying workers bonuses or hiking hourly wages, but any significant income growth has yet to surface in this overall economy. The tax cuts have added an average of $17 a month to people's incomes, according to an analyst by Ernie Tedeschi, head of the fiscal police analyst at the investment firm Evercore, and a former Treasury Department economist. Kudlow, as the economy gears up, and this is what Kudlow has said, as the economy gears up, more people are working, better jobs and careers, those revenues come rolling in, and the deficit, which is one of the other criticisms, is coming down, and it's coming down rapidly. Fact checking? No, it's not. Since the fiscal year started in October, Treasury Department reports show the federal government has recorded a $385 billion deficit, a 12% jump from the same period in the previous year. The Congressional Budget Office was even more blunt in a long-term assessment released Tuesday. It estimates that the national debt, the sum of yearly deficits, will be $2.2 trillion in 2027 than had previously forecasted, largely a consequence of Cheeto's 10-year $1.5 trillion tax cut. The size of the debt could be even higher if provisions of the tax cut are set to expire.